spectrum, right? You're living it, you're breathing it, you're getting sick from it. And so if we don't have a precautionary principle for the state of California, then at least we have to look at a hazard assessment model, which I know you do in permitting, but if you're measuring it against the science of prove that it's going to cause 1 in X cancers or 1 in Y asthmas, we're still on that more conservative, constrained side of it. So I'm interested in unpacking that. I don't know how far I'll get with that, but I think it's something that we fail to have a conversation about when we look at this, that the lived experience is not the ultimate publishable paper on 1 in X number of people are going to get cancer if they smell this 3 times a day. So I don't mean to speechify on it, but I want to say that I think it's something that we all have to keep in mind. And there's different language for it, depending on whether it's community-driven language, whether it's progressive policymaker language, or whether it's, the National Cancer Institute. So I want us to really hold all those things with a level of weight that we can infuse these metrics more to what it's like to run a facility and what it's like to live next to it. Exactly. And I think both those things are going to be imperative.
And I think that is getting to what you're saying, is getting to some of what I was trying to shorthand around whose experiences get centered. And the reality is we talk about an X in a million. We don't have any idea. We have no idea. And it makes it sound like it's so exact and the community either gets it or they don't. Well, if you just show them the numbers and they'll see it's actually on a blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but that's just not, it's not accurate and it's not true. And more importantly, it doesn't capture all the stuff that number doesn't capture. The things we don't have the public health system to track, the causal connections over time, synergistic effects. There's so much that we don't understand that shows up in real people's lived experience. How you get there, I don't know. Let's go on this road. Let's go on this trip. But I think it's going to be important for at least for us to be clear. And what I hope as this board is stepping out and trying to think about how it's going to show up in this space is that we are at least having the conversation. So we're being transparent about the decisions that we're making and the values that we're holding and how we're
and that when new information comes, we're willing to look at it, right? I mean, we're all going to be looking a lot more at cumulative impact. I mean, that's been delved into in some public health areas, but not in all. And the cumulative impact piece is critical because none of us are exposed to only one thing over a long period of time. So I think these are things, and when new information comes in, it's not as if you can turn a whole system on the dime. So I also really want to implore some patience because, you set up policies and procedures and then one new study over here comes out or one new bit of information there. And I think we have to be conscious that everything isn't going to happen overnight. So, but thank you. And thank you for letting me take up your time.
It was your time. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Anyone feeling okay? I think I'm going to turn it over to you now, Swati.
Okay, so we thank you, Ingrid, for that presentation. We appreciate it. And as I mentioned, all the presentations today will be publicly available on our website in the coming days. And so just wanted to circle back to the subcommittee on performance measurement and reporting, members Bhatia and Gomez. Anything else before we move on to the next subcommittee? No, okay. And member Bhatia, you're up next on strategic planning. Any updates you would like to make there?
Yes, I would like to make an update. But before I do the update, I'm going to do a preamble. And this is going to be repetition from what I shared in the past, because I want us to anchor on our approach a little bit before I share the update. Okay, so bear with me. What we talked about when we last got together was the fact that the strategic plan will have 2 different phases. The first phase, we're calling this the strategic plan, is simply a consumable version of our mandate that's laid out in SB 158. Okay. We feel like SB 158 is very prescriptive in terms of what the board has to go accomplish and execute on. So, and all of the strategy is already included in SB 158. However, 158 is not a consumable document that is easy for the community members to understand and for us to reference. So really, our first phase is what we're calling the strategic plan, is 158 in a condensed consumable format. It will also clarify topics in 158 that may not be very clear. So specifically, we talked about performance metrics, environmental justice, a role that we will play with advancing environmental justice goals. Those are referenced multiple times in 158, but not clearly prescribed. So our goal with phase 1 is to clarify aspects of 158 that are not clear, and then regurgitate and reference back to 158 where there is clarity on our mandate. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is what we are calling the implementation plan. It is the how we accomplish the what of the strategy. This is the specific details of when we accomplish something, who's responsible for it, how do we expect to engage with the public throughout the process. So that's phase 2. So is that any questions on this part before? That was my preamble. So phase 1, phase 2. Any questions from the board members on this topic before I give the update?
We don't.
All right. Okay. So with that being said, I think let's just talk about what to expect next in terms of advancing strategic plan. What we've done so far is we have a working draft of this phase 1. We're going to call the strategic plan, right? The phase 1 strategic plan. We have a working draft of it. It includes our purpose, so our mission, why we exist. It includes guiding principles. We felt like, Angela, you made the point about how we can't always anchor on metrics and numbers. So this is our way of putting out our values on paper. So our guiding principles, transparency, accountability, making sure in everything that we do, we're taking the lens of community protection and environmental justice. These are included in our working draft. And then the third aspect is what we're calling strategic objectives. They are pulled from 158, but sort of categorized in a way that's easier for us to follow. And this document will serve as guardrails for areas we can engage on and focus on, because we are a limited number of people, and we have a very broad mandate, as you've all taken away from the course of the day today. So we will use that document as an anchor point for topics we can meaningfully engage on. Okay, so with this working document, I had the opportunity over the last few weeks to connect with each board member to solicit their input on topics they would like to see included in the strategic plan, and also get their input on specific strategic objectives and dig further into 158. So what I'll do now is give you a little bit of an overview of the themes that came up in my individual conversations. Given that we have BK, we obviously didn't do a joint review of the working draft, which is why this is everyone's opportunity at the board to hear the kinds of input that I received. All right, so on the strategic plan, I think generally the board members, I heard alignment on this two-phase approach, which is the strategic plan and the implementation plan. There's a desire to keep this as a living document that we keep going back to. I think general understanding that we're all educating ourselves, and we will definitely uncover new information over the course of the weeks and the months we're on the board. So we, instead of calling this locked and done, we will have this as a living document on our website, and we'll keep coming back to this as we uncover new information. So that's the second thing. The third is there's a very, very strong desire to make sure that there's a public engagement component and workshopping component for our implementation plan. Given that SB 158 went through extensive reviews and public participation processes before it was adopted, we felt like the strategic plan aspect itself is already codified, but the implementation plan or the how we achieve our objectives, we can solicit and will solicit public engagement on. So that's another theme that came up. There was a suggestion to include environmental justice as a guiding principle, in addition to listing it as a separate objective, a separate strategic objective in our working draft. So we talked about that. I think in general, these are the sort of comments that came up from the board members. So I'm going to pause here. Any questions on this input?
No.
Okay, keep going. All right. We also received input from Ingrid. So thank you again, Ingrid, for providing input. I think generally from this conversation, we took away that there's an alignment on this two-phased approach. Again, want to take this opportunity to invite other members of the community, business community and public community to engage with us on the strategic plan. I'd like to propose that we put out this working draft for public review at the next board meeting, knowing that it is a version for you all to read and react to. It'll be a living document, so the next board meeting will be the first of many opportunities for you to provide comments. That's it. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Sushma. You've been really thinking a lot about this and trying to take everything in and incorporating it. And we have a lot of different people and entities and communities to satisfy with this. So I hope you don't expect that you can do everything with it. Okay, so I just want to, it'll be living, breathing, moving, and there will be subsets of it. This is really our overarching governance piece, and then we'll be drilling down when we have individual activities or work plans for individual elements of it. So I just was trying to take a little bit of the pressure off your expectation that you complete the thesis document. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or input for Sushma, who loves to hear from people? So please do reach out to her.
Although not many people are reaching out. I've done this call at the last 2 board meetings as well. So thank you, Ingrid, for taking me up on my offer. But if there's other members that want to engage on the strategic plan, please do reach out. BES info at BES.
It's not a boring subject.
No.
I mean, come on, Okay, go ahead.
So the next item or subcommittee fee structure, I'll just preface this by saying that there's many things, as you all know, that the board needs to prioritize. And so what that means is that some of these other items we need to wait on. So it doesn't mean that it's not important. It's very important. It's just about timing. And so I will say there hasn't been any movement on fee structure yet, but if Chair Rizzo or Member Bhatia have any comments about it, you can say it now.
No, there's no
or not.
comment. We know that it's not something we're going to address urgently because it's been done quite recently, and we are not in a position yet to make any further recommendations. So there's a lot that goes into that. If it were determined that we wanted to make any changes in the fee structure, that's a big, long process. So we need to get the rest of our house in order before we go and proffer a change like that. We're not positioned with the structure or the credibility yet to do that.
And then permit appeals. I know we heard a lot about that earlier this morning, but I just wanted to circle back with Member Ruiz and Vice Chair Hacker to see if there's anything in addition that we missed from this morning.
I don't think we've missed anything. I just would really like to reiterate the importance of having the public's input on this important process, and really do encourage you all to attend one of the workshops or email us with any comments or questions or concerns.
Okay, next subcommittee is Hazardous Waste Management Plan, Member Ruiz and Member Bhatia.
Yes, so as you all know, hazardous waste management is very important, and it's part of our mandate to to approve the upcoming report from the hazardous waste management team. They have been having numerous trainings throughout the last couple of months. They have a very wonderful website that really summarizes a lot of the work they've done. And they also have links to not only the slides, but also the presentations. And I can read some of these topics that are already available. The first one was conducted on June 22nd with the topic of universal waste current findings, methodology, and next steps. The second happened on July 20th, and they really had a really thorough presentation on manifested hazardous waste definitions, methodology, data, and the last workshop was on August 3rd, dealing with hazardous waste transportation, distance between generators and destination facilities, transportation options, and considerations for transportation costs. And these are very thorough presentations that have a lot of numbers, and I feel like a lot of the questions that were brought up today might be answered in a lot of those presentations, and a lot of the ideas too on what to do with hazardous waste. I think that's very important to provide the team with that information so that they can implement those comments onto their report. The first report is going to be due on March. And so they will be compiling a baseline of information regarding a lot of these assessments. So I do encourage the public to reach out to them with any comments, concerns, questions, to listen to a lot of those presentations, just to get a better understanding of where a lot of our hazardous waste is coming from, where it's going. And like I said, I'm pretty sure they can pull up any specific information. It really seemed like they have a lot already. But their email is DTSC_HWplan@dtsc.ca.gov. And I understand the questions can be sent there as well as comments. Is that correct, Ryan? And so as part of the board, we have asked for access to a lot of those comments. So we should be getting those as they become compiled within the next few weeks. Anything else?
Member Bhatia, was there anything you wanted to add? Okay. So next item is environmental justice and outreach. Member Gomez and Member Ruiz.
Not much. We're just in process of working with DTSC and making sure that there is a process that we can work with. So we're in the waiting, and hopefully soon we'll have a bigger conversation.
There has been some community engagement that has happened throughout. Like I mentioned during Meredith's presentation, we have been listening in on a lot of the meetings, Santa Susana Field Lab. I know a lot of us listened into the X side. We also did receive an invitation to attend a couple of the environmental justice symposium trainings. And so it has been very helpful for us to really, become familiar and listen to the public, especially regarding a lot of the concerns that have been brought up to us as a board related to Santa Susana Field Lab and to X-Site. And so I feel like beyond that, it helps really understand some of the additional work that the community members are taking upon themselves to assess the situation. This last weekend, I did attend a health fair in Maywood, put together by Comité Pro Uno. And the purpose of this health fair was to present the work that they have compiled within the X-Side 1.7 mile radius. And so they presented their report that is available on their website. I'm pretty sure you can find it if you look up Comité Pro Uno. It was a very thorough study. It involved using the Casper system for community assessment, the Community Assessment for Public Health Emergency Response Toolkit. And so it really incorporated a lot of on the ground work by community members to do their own study, their own surveys within the community, having truck counts, having air monitors placed throughout the region, and really ask questions that might not be reflected on a lot of these publicly available websites. So asking the community, what are the health concerns you have? What are you worried about? What are ailments that might affect your community? And I feel like that's something that's really important in our community. As somebody that grew up just shy from the 1.7-mile radius, I grew up literally blocks away from that cutoff. And so it's, just knowing that, a lot of the folks in our community don't have access to a lot of medical services. So a lot of these health impacts aren't recorded. And so it's really, I feel like it really highlights that data gap. And also throughout some of the even the EJ symposium, talking about lead and going further into the lack of information that we might have as an agency gathering the health impacts from lead, the way that a lot of the testing has been conducted, and even though it might not be feasible, but really acknowledging that there might be further assessment for how lead impacts our bodies, how to find that out. I know that a presentation was made on a study of baby teeth collected within the Excite affected communities, and assessing the lead impacts from that, the accumulation of lead in that. And also the need for further assessment. I know that the USC is working with Comité Pro Uno folks in areas outside the 1.7-mile radius to really figure out, whether or not or how far we should be testing. And a lot of the community concerns had to deal with just the fact that we don't have money to really go further into, not only just cleaning up sites, because a lot of properties have been tested, but the prioritization that we've had to do, that had to be done because there's not enough money to clean up every site. And it's unfortunate for a lot of people. They might be just shy of that 200 parts per million cutoff, and so, or they might not have children that live on their property, but some kids still come by. A lot of grandparents own some of these properties and have their kids come by pretty often. So it really brings a lot of these concerns. I know that another concern that was brought up to me was outreach. How our elders in our community how can they have access to us when they don't have internet? They don't, they can't just go on a website or send an email. And so it really, I feel like opportunities like this really give us the chance to really see beyond what we see here. A lot of those people might not even have the time to come to our meetings. So, and I know that's been even an issue for us to to address, because of a lot of the facilities that like these don't really give us the time to have these meetings on a later time. So I think these are definitely something to keep in mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Ruiz. The next item is our subcommittee. We're still building out, and now that we have our buds, it will be a kind of a loop back of public comments that we receive. We receive a lot of public comments either via email or during these meetings or otherwise. And now that we have staff that's going to be working on this and connecting with various board members on that loop back. And so that is something in upcoming board meetings that we'll have more report back on, but just wanted to let you all know that that'll be a new subcommittee. The next subcommittee is board meeting planning, which is Chair Rizzo and Vice Chair Hacker. I don't believe there's any updates there than that we've already talked about, but just to call it
No,
out.
you've witnessed our planning.
And in the interest of time, we are going to take a 5-minute stretch break before we continue on to board liaison and the rest of the agenda items. We have about 55 more minutes of this meeting, so sit tight and I'll let Jessica call the time for them.
Yeah,
I know
so
you're going to
if
want to be
everyone
here for
could,
the minutes, for the approval of the minutes, because I know you've all read them.
yeah, so if everyone could return at 4:10, we will promptly restart the meeting at 4:10 p.m. All righty, so we are coming back from break now. I just want to mention that we maintain quorum with all of our board members still with us at the dais. And we will move into, go ahead, Swati.
So next we will hear about board member liaison. So liaison to Department of Defense, Vice Chair Hacker.
Gladly. I've been updating our colleagues at DoD who are represented through colleagues at the Navy. I wanted to offer congratulations to the DTSC permitting folks. They were very complimentary about the receipt, the finalization of the North Island Air Station Coronado permit, which was done in a 2-year period, according to them, went extremely well. I think this good news and huge progress of meeting these DTSC permitting metrics is part of what Wayne and his team are seeking to achieve. And they were very complimentary. After our next meeting in September, DTSC and DoD will have one of their regular leadership meetings, which I may be able to attend and can then report back to the board.
Thank you. And you're still on liaison to Water Board.
I think in the interest of time, I don't have any new information with regard to Water Board, Ocean Protection Council, Cal Recycle. So I will endeavor to bring that to our next meeting.
Thank you. And Member Bhatia, liaison to California Air Resources Board.
I'll keep the update short. We're in communication with the Deputy Director of ARB, as well as their Environmental Justice Liaison. We're in this exploratory phase where we're trying to figure out what are the areas of potential collaboration. So we've already identified a few areas like metal shredders and green chemistry and brake pads and so on. We spoke a little bit about the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program and perhaps finding opportunities for us to work with them as they develop these community plans. So more on that in future meetings.
Thank you. And I also wanted to announce that we'll have 2 new liaisons. One, Member Bhatia will be liaison to the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHA, and Member Gomez will be liaison to Cal Environmental Protection Agency Tribal Affairs.
Right. We had a great connection with Lauren Zeiss. Lauren, if you're on Zoom, we really appreciated that, and she's very eager and welcoming for your liaison, Sushma. We had an opportunity to meet with her and identified a number of areas of overlapping interest and concern as they create steering committees that might be appropriate for you to be part of, or working committees. So, and they also have a metrics obligation around environmental justice that they're working on. So I think that's something for the follow-up. So anyway, want to just say we set that up for you. She's ready for you.
And before we go to the next agenda item, I'm gonna give it back to Jessica for public comment.
So we do have another public comment, and this is regarding performance metrics presentations. So Mr. White, if you'd like to step up to the podium and make sure to speak directly into the microphone.
I'll do my best. Chuck White again. I'll try to be real brief. I was thinking you were going to have further comments after Angela spoke, but then you moved on. But I just a couple comments about Ingrid's presentation. I wish she was still here. The issue of CalEnviroScreen is you should be aware that it's kind of weighted heavily against hazardous waste facilities because there's a specific category in CalEnviroScreen for hazardous waste facilities and generators. There's also a category for solid waste facilities, but not solid waste generators. And there aren't any other industrial activities in California that are specifically called out in CalEnviroScreen. So at the beginning, all hazardous waste facilities are on CalEnviroScreen, at least at some level, simply because they exist. It has nothing to do with how much emissions or how much releases are happening. And so Valor is a tool that California has chosen to use, but it's not a perfect tool. And I just wanted to simply make the point that it weighs heavily against hazardous waste facilities simply because they exist. Doesn't include refineries, doesn't include other types of facilities, warehouses, for example, that there's a lot of concern about lately. So just wanted to bring that up. You should be aware of that concern. Let's see, I think I had one more thing. What was it?
Chuck, let me just ask for a point of clarification since
Sorry?
may I ask a point of clarification?
Of course.
It's on there. Is that a weighted score because it's on there? Is the score weighted in some way because
I don't
there's-
remember off the top of my head,
Okay,
but it's.
well, that's a
I
question.
can respond to
We'll
that if you
explore
like.
that. I don't
Yeah.
know if its presence changes its overall score.
Oh, yeah, well, simply because you're a hazardous waste facility, you have a score.
Oh, okay.
That's my point. And other operations that have
All right, we'll
contamination.
dig into that, and it's perfect opportunity since you'll be working.
Let's see, what was my other one? The other issue was, I think Ingrid brought up, and she did a great presentation, and I don't really take exception to it, other than that you brought it up, is the fact that you not only want to make sure you know where hazardous waste are going for treatment, storage, and disposal in California, but you should look at also stuff that's being exported for hazardous waste storage and disposal, and making sure you're able to understand what the impacts of your decisions might be on that whole various options that exist. Last time I looked, or last time I heard from DTSC, they were estimating about 50% of all hazardous waste generated in California is exported to other jurisdictions, many of which don't have the same kind of environmental controls that California has. So I understand your primary charge is the Board of Environmental Safety for California. It's an appropriate role, but just remember there's other folks that may be subject to hazardous waste exposure simply because it's being exported to other jurisdictions that don't even operate close to California standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair? So can I quickly add, since Mr. White mentioned the hazardous waste management plan, I wanted to reiterate that a lot of valuable information related to these topics is included within a lot of the presentations provided by the hazardous waste management plan group. And everything's very neatly compiled on their website. And I forgot to encourage the rest of the board to really go through those presentations and recordings. I feel like that's really going to help us understand when March comes around, really understand the comments that are going to be coming in, and also help us assess the draft report.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been sending them out every time their
Swathi can
group
send it out. Thank you.
has a public workshop. I remind you all, so it's in there.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for our interpretation to limit the amount of crosstalk.
Yes, guilty as charged.
Oh, okay. Next, agenda number 8. It's back to you, Chair Rizzo, on stakeholder engagement. Or do you want me to talk about this?
Okay.
I don't think your mic is on.
So after the last board meeting and the board tours that all the various board members had done, they compiled reports of their different experiences, the organizations that they met with, and those reports are posted on our website. And so right now is the opportunity for the board members to ask each other any questions. They've all read each other's reports. If they had any questions about any of the site visits, organizations, anybody that they met with in July.
So maybe we can start with Lizette, Member Ruiz, if you have any comments or questions about your fellow board members' engagement reports.
Yes, I had a quick question regarding some of the concerns brought up by community members related to Exide, the cleanup process. I believe there was a comment about housing, offsite housing opportunities related to the cleanup. I did hear some concerns related to that at the community event in Maywood. And so I wanted to see if you can clarify whether or not the concern was related to whether the residents were offered the opportunity to have offsite housing. It's my understanding, and during the health fair, DTSC did have the opportunity to present um, updates on the cleanup and how to sign up for testing and subsequent cleanup. It was my understanding that residents who have health concerns that might be exacerbated by the cleanup activities have the opportunity to have a hotel paid for if the cleanup takes longer than 2 days. So I'm curious as to what concerns related to that you guys received.
Lizette
Ye-
and probably Georgia as well, if you guys can kind of get a little bit farther back from your microphone, because there's getting a lot of pushback.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you hear me? This is good?
A little bit closer.
Closer? Yeah, like that?
Right
Like that?
there, yeah.
All right, try not to. Yeah, so in regards to the concerns that we heard, and I'm trying to kind of recall my memory, so I apologize if I don't express everything, but it was more about when there was agreement of the person wanting to go through the cleanup process. Sometimes, depending, there's not like a specific, this is always available, but hotels are available for a certain amount of time. There's a meal, also stipend. So if they're not going to get relocated for the cleanup duration, they would also, in addition to relocation, they would also get meal stipends as well. So the relocation for the cleanup period was for sure, I believe, offered to our seniors, if I remember correctly.
If I may
Yeah.
just add, I took away from the site visit that there's a framework or some criteria that would trigger this offsite relocation package. Part of it might be like their seniors are unable to maybe move, or there might be another consideration which is medical related. If there's some pre-existing health conditions and they just cannot be in proximity of a cleanup site, they'd get offered. But I do recall that it wasn't an automatic provision offered to everyone who was going through a cleanup.
Yeah, that was correct. It's case by case.
Yeah, and I believe that was the concern, that it's something that's not mentioned to everybody, and so something like asthma might not be readily visible. So I think that's definitely something to keep on our radar, as far as, whenever Exide Commons updates do come up, to really make sure that that's something that's offered or at least noted for the people
Well,
receiving.
let's remember too, there is a community advisory committee for the Exide program. We should find out what that is. Talk with Jessica now, and comments or questions from community members that they have a community advisory group as well.
Yeah.
So we should, now that we're in the place where we can set something up with our ombuds to say, where do some of these questions and comments go? And ones that we want to hear back, how does that work?
Yeah.
So for our own learning. So I don't think we're particularly able to answer our own questions often, right?
Yeah.
We need to get them to the right people. So we'll be, and that's a really good point in establishing some of the work planning for our ombuds, right?
And it might be a question, that might have, or it might be an incident that has to do with training the people that are, overseeing these cleanups one by one, or it might just be, maybe we need more money. We obviously need more money for these cleanups, but if something, it is
Right,
pretty
and-
important for.
Right.
residents and it
getting
especially
it back into the proper place for
Yes.
it, right? I mean, that's our role, right?
Yes.
Our role is to see to it that it's heard and that the appropriate people have it and can respond, and then we understand the response. Even if that response is, we only have enough money for 2 nights, or whatever the answer is. We may not think that's a great answer, but it may be the answer.
And it might be information that we can bring up during the MPL process as well. Now that, hopefully more money is going to be available.
Yeah, that particular site is not about us having an appeal for it. I mean, we're not involved in,
NPL, the National Priority List, NPL listing.
well, and there is, right.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, then.
Any other questions from any of the board members about each other's reports?
I have a question. And to Jeannie's point, we may not have the answer. So I'm just going to ask the question and note that we will all have to understand this better and educate ourselves. So this is for Jeannie and for Lizette, related to your site tours and meetings. You, in your notes, talked about a land use covenant, about how DTSC has the authority to place a land use covenant on sites to prevent other polluting facilities from repeating history. So it's a note for us to understand the history of how this authority has been used in the past, and whether or not the board can influence and shape how DTSC uses this approach.
Just really quickly, a note on land use covenants. They are used to prevent, so if a site is cleaned up to, for instance, a commercial industrial standard, it prevents a business or entity from developing something that is not commercial industrial. So for instance, residential or another site that is considered a sensitive receptor, which would be hospitals and daycares and things like that. So that's how that's used, is to prevent these sensitive receptors from being built on contaminated or commercial industrial levels.
No, this is
What was this in relationship to?
the KIPP school, right?
No,
Pardon?
Exide actually.
Oh,
It
Exide.
sounds, from the notes I'm taking away, that this came up in your stop 2, which is the Exide location and the Maywood residential neighborhood. You talked in your notes about placing a land use covenant.
May I suggest that we could have a briefing in the future on the larger topic of institutional controls and how they're put in place at the state and federal level, how they work at the local land use authority level. So why don't we just make a placeholder for the institutional controls, among which are land use covenants.
Yeah, because I think something like this can fall across pretty much every site we visit. I honestly thought it was related to KIPP schools because I know that came up as well. The fact that, these industrial sites have the potential to be developed with schools, charter schools or private schools that don't necessarily fall under the oversight of DTSC as the regulations currently stand.
It is true for the site that they want to put a KIPP school on, that it's not under the authority of DTSC because it's a charter school. It's the local city council who rejected the very environmental impact report that they commissioned, and they overruled it and said it still could be built. That was then followed by a local community group litigating, and that's where that is now. So there's a number of things that are beyond the control of DTSC or the board, but certainly feed into, they can push those up to Cal EPA and to the governor's office and the legislature. And when it comes time to identifying issues for the legislature that have impacted communities, we certainly could include in our ledge report coming upon those kinds of things, and the legislature could act to change that, because they don't have the authorities to do it, is our understanding.
Chair Rizzo, I'm going to have Greg chime in for
Greg?
some clarification.
Yeah, actually, I reviewed the notes from the tours in July, and the Kudahi matter in particular was interesting to me. And so I reached out to the attorney that represents that community group that filed the lawsuit against the city. She actually sent me the judgment that was issued by the trial court in that matter. And it's I was interested because it's a CEQA case. And because that site does not actually appear as a DTSC cleanup site, which is surprising to me. I assumed that that would be, already sort of identified by DTSC as a site, but in fact it isn't. Apparently they haven't reached that part of the process yet to come to DTSC for cleanup guidance and oversight. But what I can tell you about that is that the city made a determination that a school could be allowed as a ministerial approval under the zoning. And the lawsuit was aimed at that because ministerial actions are exempt from CEQA. And the theory is that if a city does not have the discretion to impose conditions, then they lack the authority to impose mitigation measures, and essentially it renders the CEQA process ineffectual. And the judge disagreed with the city, found for the petitioners, sent it back to the city, remanded, and demanded that the city go through the CEQA analysis, comply with CEQA, not exempt the project. But the city and KIP have appealed that decision. And so that's the current posture, is it stayed. I believe they do have settlement discussions and so forth. But that's kind of the latest and greatest I was able to gather on that.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions? All right. Next agenda item. Are we fine to go to the next agenda item? Yep. No. Pending appeal update. So I am going to just read through two of the pending appeals, the issue memorandum. So first, on July 28th, 2022, Lighting Resources LLC, a California limited liability company, filed an appeal on the permit decision for its Ontario facility. The appeal alleges legal and factual errors in the permit and disputes a policy determination involving the management of universal waste as hazardous waste. The permit decision does not take effect until the board appeal processes is complete. The appeal will be decided by the board once the board has established its appeal procedures, which is anticipated in early 2023. Any questions by the board members? Next, on August 4th, 2022, on behalf of the Clean Air Coalition of North Whittier and Avocado Heights, Earth Justice filed an appeal of a temporary authorization approved by the Department of Toxic Substance Control, DTSC, for Cometco to install and operate a compression auger and centrifuge. DTSC approved the temporary authorization on July 22nd, 2022. The appeal is based on the following grounds. 1, DTSC's granting of the temporary authorization is unlawful, and 2, DTSC failed to meet CEQA requirements. Due to the filing of the appeal, the temporary authorization does not take effect until the board's appeal process is complete. The appeal will be decided by the board once the board has established its appeal procedures, which is anticipated in early 2023. Any questions by the board? All right.
I have a couple of comments to add with those. First, as we heard today, the appeals process itself has some complexity. And so DTSC has information on its website to help the public understand the process. That, of course, still relates back to the old process. It refers to the DTSC permit appeals officer, et cetera. So we are in the process of updating that. Obviously, the board now has a role there. And so we're changing and just letting the public know. It was already mentioned earlier today by board member Alexis mentioned it. But just to reiterate that that's something that you can see coming on the website, hopefully in the next week. That's one thing. Second thing, I provided guidance to the board members around one specific aspect of hearing appeals. It is the prohibition on ex parte communications. You have already added that to your guidance document. What the guidance document provides you is the basic rule. And what my guidance document does is helps to answer in a questions and answers format some of the more nuanced questions around that. So who can you talk to? When can you talk to them? What can you talk about? Before a decision's made, while an appeal is pending, all of those things. So I hope that you all find that to be helpful and informative. And of course, we are also going to make that available to the public so that you can see it as well. And how to approach the board on those specifics and how to steer clear of those. Ultimate goal being to allow the board members to participate in these discussions and not to have to recuse themselves or to preserve the process and its integrity and keep it fair and transparent, so forth.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, I think it's time for the minutes. Are y'all excited? Okay,
In the Academy Awards, when they get to Best Picture.
oh yeah, this
This
is the
is
Best
that-
Picture Award, yes. The picture of, okay, we have minutes to approve and I think you will find which one?
They are for May
May
19th and June
19th,
10th.
2022 minutes. Thank you for the effort to make them not a verbatim transcription, which we did in the past, which just erring on the side of not being clear what we had to do. So now they're so much easier, and I know you've all read them and memorized them. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Into
and
the
then
microphone.
Any amendments can come after that if you have any. So anybody so move?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda item 11, the minutes for the May 19th and June 10th meetings.
One at a time, please.
Okay, sorry.
That's right.
I move that we adopt the minutes for the May 19th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Georgette seconds. Any discussion, comments, amendments, concerns? You just love the minutes, right? Okay. Jessica, can you take the roll on that motion to approve the May 19th minutes as presented?
I certainly can. Alexis Strauss-Hacker,
Aye.
Jeannie Rizzo,
Aye.
Georgette Gomez,
Yes.
Sushma Bhatia,
Yes.
and Lizette Ruiz.
Yes.
All in. Wow. All have approved the decision is unanimous. The motion is approved.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to June 10th. And again, these were shorter. So may I have a motion to approve the June 10th minutes?
This is Liz. I so move.
Lizette, so moved. Do we have a second?
I second.
Sushma, seconded. Any discussion, amendments?
A question, a point of order for our attorney. If I don't participate in that meeting, can I? If one of us is not present for the meeting, can we approve the minutes? Or do we recuse?
Did you review the recording for the meeting?
Who was this? Who are you talking to?
I mean, I don't know which board member was absent from the
Liz.
meeting. Liz.
I was there.
No,
Oh. June 10th.
For June 10th.
June 10th, this was to approve the contract.
Oh, the contract. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
you were
I-
not
I
present.
I was not present for
All
that.
right,
For catching that.
we're going to pull
be-
back a little bit.
I'll be happy to make a
And
motion.
Greg, She wasn't present, so should we redo this motion?
Was she going to withdraw her motion?
Yeah, I withdraw
I-
my motion.
She can motion, she just,
She just withdrew her motion.
Okay.
So let's start over. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll be happy to make the motion, Gomez.
Gomez may move to approve the June 10th.
I second.
Batia seconded. Can we call the roll, please?
yes. Jeannie Rizzo,
Yes.
Shushma Bhatia,
Yes.
Georgette Gomez,
Yes.
Lizette Ruiz,
Yes.
Alexis Strauss-Hacker.
Yes, but I think that Board Member Ruiz has to recuse.
I think you need to recuse yourself if you
Okay.
weren't there.
Abstain.
Even if I was briefed, or
Abstain.
I guess I could abstain.
We're having a parliamentary crisis. Give us one more. Jeez, the easiest thing on the whole agenda. I know, wait, I know.
I'll
I know.
abstain, it's fine.
Good
Thank you.
practice.
So we have 4 ayes, no nays, 1 abstention. The motion passes.
Excellent.
And look, we're back
Okay.
on track in terms of timing.
Woo.
Oh, that was fun. We are now coming to the, I know, we're now coming to the end. Where are we on the agenda? We are now just going to have reflections, correct?
Agenda items by Member Strauss-Hacker.
Yes, thank you. Strauss-Hacker.
The board's next meeting in the Bay Area will include a continued focus on receiving public input on permit appeals. And to that end, by the time we next meet, on our website, we will see the ex parte guidance to the board that our attorney just referenced, with the goal, as he stated, of preventing board members from recusing themselves as these actions come live. We have received a request for different forms of engagement that we're going to discuss internally and decide how we can continue our practice of engaging with community members and inviting briefings as appropriate. For example, today we talked about earlier the idea of a DTSC presentation to highlight the successes and challenges in community engagement, and possibly to talk about a particular example in Oakland, for example, the vapor intrusion operation on Webster Street. Again, I'm reiterating that some of these are just ideas for the September meeting and not necessarily on the September agenda. We are interested, Board Chair Rizzo mentioned a meeting with OEHA's Director Lauren Zeiss, and we would be interested in a future OEHA presentation to the board on what OEHA is working on presently. We're going to continue to solicit input and presentations, if appropriate, on permit appeals. We may talk further about our strategic plan draft. And then in my notes, whether in September or at a future meeting, we may talk about institutional controls in a briefing from DTSC, and we'd probably benefit from a good Cal Enviro screen briefing at some point. So those are some of the ideas. We might also venture further into some opportunities as long as we are likely to be in Oakland, which is one of the Cal EPA environmental justice communities, of talking about the Cal EPA environmental justice MOA and inviting some community members to talk about that. So that's also a placeholder, and we'll see what we can work out.
Great. And does that include action items from today's meeting? Do you feel like we've covered both those elements?
If you give me a moment, I'll reread my notes for action items, but to your left, you have 2 board members interested in chatting.
I wanted to add a briefing on performance metrics by DTSC, either at the next board meeting or for consideration at the future one.
Got it.
I have a suggestion for a presentation. So I know that when I talked to my friends about my interest in the ombuds position, a lot of them didn't know what it was. So it is a very jargony term. So I would put forth presenting on the ombuds office, what it is, what it does, and where we are so far on at the next meeting, you know, what the
Thank
status
you.
is of that.
Right, because there's there's SB 158, and then it's the way that it got set up. So I think it's going to be important to clarify, talk about duties, scope, access. And so that's an excellent idea. Thank you. We'll put that on the future agenda. Thank you for that, Jessica.
And I have just one more suggestion or recommendation. We discussed a little bit, throughout the meeting about the past, present, and future of and how these things go. So maybe possibly a brief kind of recap from the hazardous waste management plan. Just maybe in a short presentation. I know they're doing their own workshops, but it might be good to also have it here.
Great.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll circle back. I know that their team is very busy, and at the appropriate time, we can have them come and present. We've been having ongoing internal meetings with the committee member Bhatia and member Ruiz. But when the time is appropriate, we'll have them come and present.
Right, and part of what we'll be discussing over time, and you and Swathi will spend quite a bit of time on this, your inclusion now it's different, right? So we're not just trying to pull you away from your role at DTSC, but incorporating into various onboarding activities that we do and really outlining a really good work plan for you in terms of getting up to speed from the perspective of the board, as opposed to from your perspective in the role that you played in public participation for DTSC. So we're looking forward to that transition. We'll now have some reflections, unless you're ready, Alexis.
I can do both. We didn't have the same kind of action items as in prior board meetings. As a result of the DTSC presentation on the permit process, I wanted to, on behalf of the board, thank Wayne, Mohammed, and Paul, and their presentations will be posted on our website within a week or two. In terms of the comments we received, Ingrid Brostrom has kindly agreed that her presentation will be available on the permit appeal process recommendations on our website. And I join with board member Ruiz in inviting your input to our upcoming workshops. The meeting resumed after lunch with a quorum. We received public comment for items not on the agenda, with a particular focus on a North Richmond contaminated site, where the proposed remedy for the site is being disputed with regard to cleanup levels for contaminants such as lead and arsenic. And we will follow up with DTSC Berkeley. From Director Williams, we heard a host of updates resulting from her appearance with Chair Rizzo at the legislative hearing, and other more contemporary things with regard to the Santa Susana Field Lab settlement agreement with Boeing being in effect, with the draft permit being released for Fibrotech, the recent nail products webinar, and the recent Exide public meeting. So those are just a quick recap, and I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Really quickly, if any of the public would like to provide any sort of things that the board should be looking at or adding to their agendas, please email us at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov.
Lizette, rapid fire, 1-minute presentation on today's meeting and reflection.
I feel like it went really productive, and I really do appreciate the public's input as well as the board. I feel like these moments seem very rare. I think with all the work that's been going on, it definitely doesn't feel like it's been a month since we met, but I'm so happy that we're all here together.
Great, thank you. Sushma?
Huge thank yous to all the people that presented, Ingrid, Meredith, Paul, Wayne, Mohammed, also public comments from Angela, Debbie, and then the community members from North Richmond. There are two things that were really memorable for me from today. One is the detailed discourse and learning around the permit appeals process itself. I'm personally walking away with a lot more information to be able to guide and advise and develop the future process. That's one. The second thing I appreciated is all the notes, the time that the board members took to write down their notes from the site visits and the community meetings. The fact that it's in public record and we're able to read it, just adds to my learning. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Sushma. Georgette?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the board members that did a lot of prep work to put this meeting together, specifically on the permitting discussion. Both Liz and Alexis, thank you for that. And the public engagement, I always appreciate it. So thank you for folks that were here and participated in person as well as over Zoom.
Thank you, Georgette.
I wanted to note in the 6 months since we have been stood up as a board and been built by our formidable chair, that it's lovely to be at this point where we have our executive officer, we have our board attorney, we have our ombuds, and the AGPA, whom I think we will be introducing at our next meeting. So I really have the sense of the organization being built to carry out the mandates that we've been given. I appreciate those of you who've come time and again to our meetings and borne with us throughout the long day. And I wanted to thank our translators, Fabiola and Mark, for their services today, as well as CSUS. I know we have a slide of a group of folks. I have at least 10 on my list that we want to thank.
Right.
And Corinne, you may have that. Here we go.
I'd like to hear also from Swathi, as you now are on your, third meeting, second, fourth? How many meetings?
Feels like 100. No, just kidding.
Feels like
And
100,
we're planning into 2023. No, we have a lot to do, and I hope the board walks away from these meetings re-energized of, all right, let's get to work. And I know that there's a lot of things that everybody wants the board to focus on, and it's so important to do this thoroughly and do it well. And so I thank you for your patience, because this is going to take time. These are some big things that the board members have to consider. So it's, again, thank you for your patience through all this and continued patience through the next few years. As we've been talking about public engagement and how DTSC can do this better, I also want to hear about how we can do this better. We are new, we're starting, so we're all ears right now. There are things that are within our capacity that we can do, and there's things that we just can't, but we're still all ears, and we want to know how can we do this better. We've heard about holding some of these meetings in the evenings. I've been trying, and it's just been a limitation on finding facilities that even allow us to have evening meetings. It's been a real challenge. We've heard you loud and clear, and we're still trying to do that. But if there's other things that are barriers in terms of participating and engaging in these meetings, let me know so that we can address that and make it a more inclusive process and make it more engaging and make the board members more accessible. And then, thank you to Greg, your first board meeting. So happy to have you on board. And yeah, those are my parting thoughts. Hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll have even more staff to announce.
That's right. So Greg, being that it's your first board meeting officially, I know you were watching us on your video before that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Spying on us.
Yeah, but I'm happy to be here. This is an accomplishment, or one meeting down now, several to go. So happy to be working with you. I'm looking forward. Glad to be able to provide support to you all. I hope I can be of service to you. Please use me as a resource. Don't hesitate. Don't do it all at once, but certainly you can rely on me. So I intend to do everything I can to give you that support, and I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Greg. And you have been a resource, so very much appreciated. Jessica, as your mixed role here.
Oh, I'll go after you.
Okay, your mixed role here as board clerk and ombuds, and you'll probably be board clerk at the next meeting too. No, we'll see.
No, I'm going to successfully transition that over to our new
That's right.
board clerk. So, thank you all so much for having me, letting me, facilitate these meetings and for giving me the opportunity. I'm honored to become the ombuds, and I am excited for what that position holds. So,
Great. Thank you. Swati, you had something else you wanted to say?
I also just, again, wanted to thank all of the presenters today. Wanted to thank Wayne, Mohammed, Paul, Ingrid. These presentations were really informative. I know we've been meeting with some of you over the past several months, but just to have it sink in again, and I know it takes a lot of time out of all of your days to create these presentations, to come and engage with the board. So I really wanted to really thank all of the presenters. Also, to put these board meetings together, we're running on a skeletal staff, and so it takes a lot of people in the background. So again, thanking DTSC staff, Kathleen, Matt, Jerry, Elsa, Catherine, Helio, Jennifer, Kim, Jessica, the Cal Recycle AV staff, Abraham, Joaquin, Josh, CIT interpretation staff, Mark, Fabiola, Chandler, and then CSUS staff has been great. Corin, Orit, Sue. I've leaned on all of you for various things, and I know I've come to a lot of you last minute. Can we do this? Can we do that? So thank you for your flexibility. It's been such a pleasure working with all of you, and I look forward to the future meetings as well.
Thank you. And I'll just add my gratitude. I started with gratitude and I want to conclude with that. You filled us today with a lot more to think about and a lot more to consider. Every single person here contributes to us becoming a better and more effective board. So I want to thank you for that. And on that note, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second, Gomez.
Okay, Georgette, second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion is unanimous. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you all so much.